Welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive into some pretty significant source material you've sent over about the civilian ship, the Madeleine.
That's right. It was headed for Gaza with aid and some, well, very prominent figures on board, like Greta Thunberg, and it was seized.
Yeah, exactly. We've got various reports, updates, reactions coming from all sides. So our mission today is really to unpack what these sources tell us. You know, what actually happened out there, who was involved.
And why? Why the mission? Why the interception? And crucially, why the completely different stories we're hearing about it.
Okay, let's start with the basics. The ship and the people behind it.
Right. So the vessel itself is the Madeleine, sometimes called the Barcarolle. It's British flagged.
And the organizers.
That's the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, the FFC. They're a group specifically focused on opposing the Gaza blockade, which has been going on for, what, nearly 20 years now?
Wow, yeah. And their stated goal for this mission, according to what we've read.
They framed it as civil resistance, directly challenging the Israeli naval blockade.
So not just about the aid.
Well, they were carrying aid. Sources mentioned baby formula, flour, rice, diapers, even children's prosthetics, but they called it a symbolic amount. The bigger picture seems to be raising awareness of the humanitarian situation and, well, just persistently trying to break through.
And this isn't new for them, is it? The sources mentioned past incidents.
No, definitely not. There's the infamous Mavi Marmara raid back in 2010, which ended tragically. And even more recently, just this April, another of their ships, the Conscience, was reportedly hit by drones near Malta. So they keep trying different things, land convoys too, like one from Tunisia.
Okay, so who was actually on the Madeleine this time? The names really caught some attention.
For sure. Greta Thunberg, obviously the climate activist, she's been quite outspoken on the conflict.
And Rima Hassan.
Yeah, the French MET, who's of Palestinian descent. And interestingly, she's actually barred from entering Israel.
Also, Liam Cunningham, the actor from Game of Thrones.
Right. In total, the sources say there were 12 activists on board from places like Sweden, France, Brazil, Spain, Turkey. Kind of a mix of well-known faces and other activists. Probably, to maximize the attention.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about the interception itself. The ship leaves Sicily June 1st.
And then it's intercepted on Monday. The FFC and Adela, the legal group, say it happened near the Egyptian coast, possibly international waters.
But Israel had already said they'd stop it, right?
Oh, yeah. They made that pretty clear beforehand.
What do we know about the moment it happened?
Well, sources mention surveillance footage from the Madeleine showing lights coming towards them. Then the FFC reported drones overhead just before they lost contact.
Oh.
Then Israeli naval forces boarded and took control of the yacht. That much seems clear from everyone's account.
Right, and that's where the stories really diverge. What was the FFC's immediate take?
Their narrative was that the activists were kidnapped in international waters. They called the seizure unlawful, expressed concern about the psychological impact on the crew.
You mentioned they lost contact.
Yeah, they reported being unable to reach the crew for, I think, 19 hours at one point. They said the immigration authority initially denied even having them. So a lot of concern there.
Okay, now flip side. What was Israel's perspective according to the foreign ministry and others?
Completely different framing. They said the ship was intercepted safely, making its way to Israel. They basically dismissed the whole thing as a media provocation.
A selfie yacht was one phrase used.
Yeah, selfie yacht, Instagram activism. The core message was that it was all just for publicity.
And Defense Minister Cass had some particularly strong words.
He did. He accused Thunberg and others of being propagandists for Hamas, even called Thunberg an anti-Semite. Very pointed language.
What about the aid they were carrying? Israel's view.
They downplayed it heavily, called it tiny, less than a truckload. They even suggested some was consumed by the celebrities on board.
And the plan for the aid and the passengers.
Israel said the aid would go through their official channels, the real humanitarian channels, and the passengers. They said they were safe, given food and water, and the plan was deportation. They also mentioned showing them videos of the October 7th attacks upon arrival in Israel.
Okay, so all of this is happening against the backdrop of the Gaza blockade itself.
Exactly, which Israel says is vital to stop weapons getting to Hamas ever since Hamas took control in 2007. It stayed in place during the current war, and we know aid groups, the WFP included, have been warning about famine because of recent land crossing issues. Aid delivery is, well, chaotic and dangerous.
And the international reaction reflects this split.
Absolutely. Hamas called it state terrorism. Amnesty International condemned Israel's actions, called the blockade inhumane, and criticized allies for, not being tougher.
And the legal angle. Adela.
Right. Adela claims it was an unlawful seizure in international waters, arguing the ship was actually headed for Palestinian territorial waters. They're demanding info, access, planning legal challenges. The UN Special Rapporteur also backed the FFC.
And the governments whose citizens were involved.
Sweden, France, Spain, Turkey, they all sought consular access, called for release. Turkey's condemnation was particularly strong, calling it a heinous attack, and the UK flag was noted too.
What happened right after? Where did they end up?
Sources say the Madeleine was taken to Ashdod port in Israel. Passengers were getting medical checks. Israel confirmed they'd be sent back to their home countries.
There was also that side detail about rescuing migrants.
Oh yeah. Apparently en route, the Madeleine picked up 4 migrants trying to avoid the Libyan Coast Guard. The FFC protested others being sent back to Libya and asked European countries to take in the ones they rescued. Adds another layer, doesn't it?
It really does. So when you step back and look at all this source material, what does it tell you, the listener?
Well, it really throws the whole Gaza blockade situation into sharp relief, doesn't it? You see these intense efforts to challenge it, the different methods used.
And the incredibly polarized reactions. It pulls global figures into this very localized, very intense conflict, sparking debate about international law, humanitarian access.
And just the power of narrative. Whose story do you believe?
Exactly. So maybe the final thought from all this is to consider those competing narratives. Was this, as the FFC argues, a genuine act of resistance against an inhumane blockade focused on aid and awareness?
Or was it primarily what Israel claims, a media stunt, Instagram activism designed for publicity and propaganda above all else? What does that huge gap between the two stories really tell us about the challenges, the motivations, and the deep divisions surrounding Gaza right now?